Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in. Today it's all about Flicks, located in Belgrave Street, Manly. Flicks at Manly was previously called the New Manly Theatre, and it opened in about 1935. Now Hoyts came along, they got involved, and in 1951 they had the whole name change. So I have found a great photo of the old theatre where there was a movie called I Want to Live by Susan Haywood on the billboard. That would have been fantastic back then. Obviously later on, there were movies like Towering Inferno, Easy Rider, the Let It Be movie, and many more. And I also noted that there were a few people that recall rolling Jaffas down the aisles of those Hoyt cinemas. So yeah, as I said, lots of movies were shown at this particular theatre. Later, an independent operator came along, took on the venture, and he renamed the theatre Flicks. It was sometime in about the late 70s. Now, to paint a picture of Sydney, 1979, there were bands such as My Sex, The Angels, The Radiators that were drawing huge crowds, and international acts like ABBA, Fleetwood Mac, and the Eagles were selling albums by the truckload. And at the time, Little River Band was probably Australia's biggest, musical export. So at this Flicks venue, they started these rock concerts, and there was a Sydney Morning Herald article that stated it would actually, the venue would operate 3 nights a week, and it would be from Friday to Sunday. And the opening act for when this all started was Christy Allen and Laurie Bamer. Look, I don't know that Flicks had a real great chance at, being a venue with longevity, and you'll find out why later, so stay tuned. Now, it was eventually closed. I believe it was called Diana's, and it just sort of faded away, I guess. Bo Diddley apparently was the big Christmas attraction, and I guess, look, in 1980 the building was put up for sale, demolished, and they replaced it with a 4-level office block and called it Tracon House or something. Here I am at 27 Belgrave Street in Manly. And this is the location of the old Manly Flicks, former live music venue, probably early 80s, and hosted some fabulous live bands. Location 27 Belgrave Street. A whole bunch of bands played at Flicks. I did also find a photo of a musician who played at the piano bar. His name was Lee Heisman. So yeah, apparently he was there often. Now, regarding the bands, I'll kind of talk about a couple of them. Apparently the Celibate Rifles, they were known as a Northern Beaches band. And I'm not 100% sure, but someone did mention it in the Facebook group where they recall seeing them play really early in their career, and in fact I believe they did start in 1979. There is a picture of them playing at Davidson High School when they supported Supernaut, and I know that they did play often at the North Stain pub, so I'm thinking it might be true that they did actually play at Flicks. There's a wonderful memory from a man called David Murphy, and it's about Skyhooks. He went to see them at Flicks, and he actually ripped the tour poster off the door one particular night, the 2nd of March 1979, and it was when Skyhooks played. They did about 21 songs that night. They were testing songs for a new album, and it was the lineup with Tony Williams and Bob Spencer. And apparently they had 2 encores, according to this man who, just had a great time there. Dave Warner, he was another artist who played. Apparently a lot of Australians loved Dave's music and his honesty. singing about Australian life, life in the suburbs, beer, footy, discos. In fact, there was an article in the Manly Daily that said that people paid about $5 to get in. They came from everywhere to see him, and apparently the place was packed. Kevin Borich has been part of the Australian music landscape for about 30 years or more. He's a great artist. Songs like Gonna See My Baby Tonight, Morning Good Morning. He was a really big and important part of the Party Boys when they had their success. And Kevin's actually still recording and touring today. He's performed with people like Carlos Santana, Joe Walsh, Australian artists like Mal Eastig. He's just a legend, and he's still playing to this day. So yeah, he was a regular at Flicks. Maori Gang, they played at Flicks, and they were supported by the Reels in about 1978. And thanks to Ron Clayton, who supplied me with a picture of the advertisement in the Sydney Morning Herald. I think as well there was another ad in the Herald about Mental as Anything. Flowers and the Numbers, they supported XTC at Flicks. Other bands like Jimmy and the Boys, Split Enz, Matt Finish, Cold Chisel, Rose Tattoo, Dragon, Supernaut, The Visitors. I think Boss Skaggs might have played there, someone mentioned. The Hitmen, the Members, the Bishops, and the American folk and blues singer Maria Mulder. She apparently played at Flicks, and she was supported by Gold Rush. Gold Rush, they feature the brothers, the Emmanuel brothers, Tommy and Phil. So yeah, that would have been a great night. And Maria's actually known for that song, Midnight at the Oasis. So yeah, that's a great, sassy song. I really like that one. Traces of romance in our head. The Knack, they actually played at Flicks, and they had Australian Crawl supporting them. Now, My Sharona was huge in 1979. In fact, I actually recall, I think I was year 6 maybe in primary school when I first heard that song. I reckon it, stayed on the charts for weeks and weeks. It was just huge in Australia. Another band that were big in Australia then were XTC, and they actually played twice at Flicks in 78 and 79. And they were pretty popular because they played in clubs all over Australia. Rob Hurst from Midnight Oil, he actually makes mention of Flicks in a Making of Midnight Oil exhibition clip that I found. And that exhibition was actually launched in 2014 at the Art Gallery in Manly.
Okay, so on the top there, you'll see the Flicks in Manly. Now, that's an interesting place. You'll notice on there 2 bands, Flowers, which became Icehouse. That's Ivor Davies' band, and Midnight Oil. And in those days, every night of the week, a big band would play gigs like that. Anyway, all those bands of that era that were lucky enough to be able to play night after night after night.
Some stories about Flicks. I don't really have a lot, so here we go. Some bands that played at Flicks like Mental as Anything and Mother Goose apparently weren't paid for their work because of the owner. Now, there were other bands like the Angels who were paid, and they were paid promptly because they had astute managers who demanded cash before going on. And I think the owner might have tried it on Rose Tattoo one night. However, he apparently got a punch in the mouth, and he then, paid up pretty quickly. I did want to briefly mention the story behind the owner, Larry Danielson. Now, he obviously found out that, the hard way, that crime doesn't pay. There was an article, and it was dated in April 1983, where Sydney Morning Herald it was in. It was reported that 2 men had been found guilty of causing explosive substances to be placed in Woolworths stores at Town Hall in Sydney, Warilla and Maitland in New South Wales in 1980. And not just that, they were demanding money, like extortion, in 1981. So they were, the owner, Larry Danielson, and the other guy, Greg McCarty. And look, despite the bombs being detonated in the middle of the Christmas rush, no one was actually injured, thank goodness. But apparently the shops were pretty damaged, and yeah. Some people actually recall seeing Larry Danielson running around town with his red Maserati. And look, I did read that apparently they spent time in jail, but only a third of the 20 years that they were supposed to spend. Barry DeVola, he's a journalist, and he recalls Flicks being his first ever pub gig. He saw the Angels and the Hitmen play that night, or that one night, and he says it was very loud, slightly scary, and totally life-changing. I can totally understand that. A few people mentioned seeing Air Supply at Flicks, as well as, on the same night, Norman Gunston and Midnight Oil. Now, Julie says that Air Supply apparently were booed off stage and they walked off. And, well, yeah, look, Norman Gunston's performance wasn't really applauded. He was singing Do You Think I'm Sexy in leopard print tights. And, yeah, he was instantly, they were just booing him, and that sort of forced him off stage. But aside from that, apparently it was a really good night. A lot of people have actually commented about that particular concert. John Tingwell, he recalls being escorted out the back by the security bouncers at Flicks, and that was after they'd rescued him from about 5 local tough boys who had decided his face and their fists made for a pretty good match. He reckons that it all happened after a Cold Chisel show, during which apparently Jimmy Barnes had been laying into the spitting first couple of rows with his microphone. Roger Lancer, he actually recalls seeing the Knack at Flicks, and he specifically remembers the hit of the times, My Sharona. He said it was only a short set, it was only about 35 minutes, and he does have memories of the first floor foyer that had little balconies that looked out onto the tennis courts, like across the road. Peter Berg, he actually grew up in Manly and was able to talk to me about both the Hotel Manly and Flicks, as he was a local. Now, he did mention that the Hotel Manly was always full, and they did have more bouncers than other venues around town. And that was because there was a seedier side that existed around the wharf area. Regarding Flicks, Peter says that it was a picture theatre that turned into a venue after the movies, and it had a 9 o'clock start. Now, he described it, the downstairs, as the dance floor area, and upstairs was like a seated theatre. He said it was pretty easy to get in, and he saw lots of bands there, including XDC, Midnight Oil, The Visitors, Lipstick Killers, Jimmy and the Boys, Matt Finish, and Flowers. Rob McSwiney, he saw Dave Warner from the Suburbs there in about March 1979. He said it was a great show, and bizarrely the same night they played a concert movie by Yes. I think it was called Yes Songs. And he also recalls the plexiglass multicoloured disco dance floors that lit up. They were quite popular at the time, I remember, so he's got a great memory of that. Look, that's about it. I don't really have many sort of stories or, lots of clips that I could show you, because it was, late 70s and the technology and all that wasn't really around. But look, if you do know of other bands that played, please let me know in the comment box. Like and subscribe so that you can get notifications when I do create more vlogs. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this vlog. And yeah, just let me know again if there are any other bands that played at Flicks or even at the Hotel Manly, as I'd be really interested to know. Thanks.